So today we are using an E hook, and we're going to start on the band first. And the band is worked in rows, and we will be working in rounds later on in the hat, but we're starting off with rows. So I'm using an E hook or a 3.5mm hook. I have my DK weight yarn, and you want to pick the yarn that's your main color. So this is my main color of my hat. Chain 5. So we've worked our 5 chains, and now we are going to single crochet in the back bump of our chain. So just turn your chain over and you can see a row of bumps, and we're going to insert our hook in the second bump from our hook and just work a single crochet, and we're going to keep working 3 more. So we have a total of 4 single crochet for row 1. And this yarn choice isn't the best. It likes to split on me a little bit, but we're going to work with it. It's the right color and it'll look nice when it's done. So I'll try to be patient. So now we're ready for row 2. We're going to chain 1. For row 2, we are going to work in the back loops only. And now we are working slip stitch, and we're going to slip stitch all the way across in the back loops only of our single crochet. And just make sure you keep your tension a little bit on the looser side. You don't want your stitches to get too tight. So just be relaxed. And we're going to slip stitch all the way across. In back loops only for a total of 4 slip stitches. And we're going to chain 1, turn. We're going to do the same thing. So it might be a little bit tricky to find where your loops are with slip stitch. If you hold it like this, you want to hold it so it's towards you. You can see all of your working stitches here. Okay, so now we're ready to work row 3. We're going to slip stitch again. So chain 1, turn, and just turn your work towards you, and now you can easily see your front and back loops. So we're just going to slip stitch across. I'm going to try not to get my stitches too tight. And slip stitching is just nice for working a band. Whoops, gives a nice ribbing effect. So it can be a little bit tedious for some people, but it does look nice when it's done. So I'm going to chain 1, turn, and work another row of slip stitch in the back loops only. So we're working 4, 1, 2, 3, and there's stitch number 4, and that is our first sequence. So we're going to chain 1, turn, and row 5 is the right side, so you want to make sure that you know your right and wrong side. So odd rows are the right side, even rows are the wrong side. So now we're doing our sequence again, and we're going to chain 1. We're going to single crochet in our first stitch, working in our back loops all the way across for a total of 4 single crochet. So that's single crochet number 3, and now and sometimes the last stitch, it can get a little bit hidden in there, but it's in there. So you just want to keep track of your count and just know I need 4 stitches. And we found our back loop. So now we've worked row 5. Now we're ready for row 6. Chain 1, turn, and we're going to slip stitch all the way across in our back loops only. So stitch number 3, trying not to work too tightly. Stitch number 4. And we're going to do that again. So this is row 7, slip stitching across. And so if you think of it as a sequence of 4, because now we are going to work another row of slip stitch. So this first section here, single crochet, slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch, that's 4 rows, and we're going to do the same thing. Single crochet and then 3 rows of slip stitch. Then we have 8 rows completed, and that's your sequence. So there's stitch 1, and also there's 4 stitches across, so a sequence of 4 and 4 stitches across, so that should make it fairly easy to remember. And you're just going to continue this sequence until your band has reached about 13.5 inches. So your single crochet rows will be the right side, so that might make it a little bit easier. So when you have reached, your band is about 13.5 inches long, you want to end on the second row of slip stitches. So here's our first, so it would be row 3 of your sequence. So that will be the row that you would want to end on. Okay, so we are about at 13.5 inches here, and this is the right side of my band. So I just have my handy little tape measure here, and you'll just want to measure it to make sure. So we're pretty close to 13.5, not quite, but it's close enough. If I worked another sequence, then it would be too long, so it doesn't have to be exact, but as long as it's right around there, that's perfectly fine. We are now going to turn this into a circle. So out of my sequence here, I have finished, this would be row 1, 2, so now we're on row 3. So what you're going to want to do is we're going to chain 1, and with the right sides touching, so this is the right side, so we want those guys to be touching, so now we've formed a circle, and we're going to close this up. So what you need to do, make sure I get my working yarn and not my tail, we are going to work, so you want to have these turned toward you so that you can see what you're doing. So we're going to work the front loops here, so this is the row that we just finished, and then we're going to work on our back loops from the ends of row 1, and we're going to slip stitch them across. So there's my front loop right there, there's my back loop, and I'm just going to slip stitch across to form my circle, and then we have completed the hat band. And this creates almost an invisible seam. It's not quite invisible, but pretty close, and you don't need to sew it, which is nice. So no extra ends to weave in. Try to avoid that as much as I can. And where's that loop? Come on, guy. It's hiding on me. There it is. This yarn, because it wants to split. Not quite sure what's going on. There's the back loop. Slip stitch it through, and we have completed our band. So now we need to turn it to the right side. So now we are ready to start working on the ends of our hat, and we're going to be working in rounds. And so now we're going to work on the ends of our rows, and we're going to be working in rounds. And we're also switching to an F or 3.75 millimeter hook. So what you're going to want to do is we're going to chain 1, and what we're going to do now is we are going to work single crochet all the way around, and you want to work 72. So it might get a little bit tricky to work them as evenly as possible, but just do the best that you can. So I've chained 1, and I'm just going to pop a stitch in right here, my first single crochet, and I'm going to go here. And then when you come to the slip stitches here, what I find to give it a little bit of a nicer look, a more neater look, is insert your hook right in the middle of the V right there. Pop it in there. And there's 3. So if you find that you need to pop in another one, you can work in the middle of the V right there, just like that. And then we're going to work in the V again. So just keep working your single crochet stitches all the way around until you have 72. And then I will meet you back and we will work on round 2. So this is round 1 we're working on, and then we'll be working on round 2. Okay, so I'm almost done my round 1, so I'm at stitch 70, So I want to do 71 and 72 right in here. So now I've worked 72 single crochet all the way around, and this row can be a little bit tricky, you know, getting the stitches evenly around. So this is your setup row, and after this it'll be a lot simpler. So hopefully you were successful in getting that round, or not, it's not rows, we're working in rounds now. So we are not going to join, we are just going to work continuously around, and that helps to prevent a seam, a noticeable seam. And sometimes, you know, some patterns it works really well doing that, and sometimes it doesn't. This one it works really well with that. So what you might want to do is just pop in a stitch marker right here, just so that you know that's your last stitch. So I will do that right now. So actually I don't have any scraps of yarn. Usually I'll just pop in a little scrap of yarn right here to mark my last stitch, but today we're going to use a safety pin so that I know this guy is my last stitch. And it'll just make my life a little bit easier when working this pattern. Alright, so now we're going to work in our first stitch, and we're going to work a single crochet, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. So this way of working single crochet might be called the waistcoat stitch, or I've heard it called split single crochet. You're going to do is usually when you work single crochet, you just work right there on the top. But we want to work in the center of the single crochet, so I like the term split single crochet because you actually are splitting it. So we're going to work more into the middle, into the V part. And what it does is it just creates, it looks more like a knitted stitch. And when you do this, make sure that your single crochet isn't too tightly. So you can see our first one, and it just looks a little bit different than a regular single crochet, and it looks more like a knit stitch. So then we're going to go to the second one, which is right here, and we're going to work in the middle. And again, I suggest not working these stitches too tightly. It just makes life a little bit easier. So we worked our second split or waistcoat stitch, and we're going to keep going around, just working single crochet or split single crochet, however you want to name this stitch, all the way around. And just watch your tension, don't make them too tight. It might just take you a little bit time to get the hang of it, but once you do, it is pretty simple, and it does really create a nice look to your pattern. And it's just a little bit different. I always like to take simple stitches and just add a little twist to them, so they're not just run-of-the-mill looking, you know, crochet projects. So I'm going to continue working my split single crochet stitch all the way around, or waistcoat, however you want to define it, to my stitch marker. So you can see how they're stacking up real nicely. Looks almost like a knit stitch. Okay, I'm almost done round 2. So I'm going to finish up round 2, working my waistcoat or split single crochet stitch here. So I'm going to take out my stitch marker there and work my last stitch. So this is stitch number 72 in round 2. Just like that. And now we are going to work on round 3, and we're going to continue on in the waistcoat stitch. So we're going to work our single crochet, so right in the middle you're going to split that single crochet. So there's 1, 2. Now we're going to work number 3. Now we're going to get ready to change colors. So you're going to want your color B. So we have our main color, color A, color B. So I'm going to thread that through. Now this yarn is probably slightly lighter weight than the other yarn, but it's close enough. So I'm trying to use up my leftovers instead of buying more. since I do have a lot. All right, so now we're going to work 3 single crochet in the same type of stitch. There's 1 in color B, 2, and now when we get back to color A, so I'm just going to finish off that stitch, and I'm trying not to work too tightly. So now we're going to work in color A again. So 1, 2, and stitch number 3, and we're going to switch back to color B. So we're going to carry our yarn across, and you just want to make sure when you carry your yarn that you're not pulling it too tightly, because that's going to mess up your tension of your hat. So just like that, not too tight. I'm going to work 3 single crochet in that same stitch. So basically all the way around we are working 3, so here's 1, 2, 3 in color A, and 1, 2, 3 color B, 1, 2, 3 color A, and we're going to finish off our 1, 2, 3 in color B. So it's all about the math. Oops. Sometimes the stitch, it'll be going along swimmingly, and then all of a sudden it wants to be a pain. So we're going to make it behave. All right, so now there's 1, 2, 3, and I'm just going to keep going around in this pattern. So 3 in color A, 3 in color B. Okay, so I'm almost done round 3. So I'm at my last 2 stitches. So there's stitch 71, and then this is the last one, and the last stitch we are going to switch back to our first color, color A. So you can see we have worked around 3 of color B, 3 of color A, and on the other side you can see that we've just carried our colors all the way around. And that just helps with finishing less ends to weave in, which is always a win. So you can mark your last stitch if you want to, it's completely up to you. And now we are going to continue with round 4. So we have color A, we're working the same type of stitch, the waistcoat or the split single crochet. So we have single crochet in that one. Actually, and then, so the first stitch of round 4 is with color A. Second stitch is going to be with color A as well, and then we need to switch back to color B to finish off that stitch. And then this stitch is going to be color A, and we're going to work 5 across with color A. So there's stitch number 1, stitch number 2, and when you insert your hook, it's kind of put it down. That makes it a little bit easier so that you're splitting that stitch. So we are at 4, so we've worked 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're at number 5, and we're going to switch back to color A, and we're going to work 1 stitch with color A. So we just have our 2 loops, and then we immediately switch back to color B. So it'll be a lot of switching back and forth, and we're going to continue with color B to have 5 single crochet all the way across. Whoops. Switching back to color B, or color A, I'm sorry. and then back again to color B. And we'll work 5, so you're working 5 across of color B, so the white here, and then in the middle is going to be the color A, which is the tan. And you're just going to keep doing that all the way around. And again, I'm just splitting that stitch. Let's see if I can get it better. My hand kind of blocks it, but I'm putting my hook kind of pointing down to get that stitch to split. There we go. Till we get to the end of our round. Okay, so we finished round 4. So this is our last stitch right here, but we actually need to finish with the color sequence. So we are going to be starting with round 5. So we're going to keep going with color B, which is right here, and our first stitch will be color B. And that's why we're working in continuous rounds, so it looks pretty seamless. And then I'm going to switch back to color A. Where are you, color A? There you are. Oops. Technical difficulties. There we go. Color A. And we are starting round 5, and we're actually repeating round 4 for round 5. So we're doing the same sequence with working the 5 stitches of color B across with the 1 stitch of color A. So we're just going to keep doing the same thing. Okay, we are coming to the end of round 5, so this is the last stitch, but we need to finish off our color sequence, so we will be starting round 6. So I'm going to finish this stitch here. This is our last stitch of round 5. Now I'm starting round 6, and I just need to work in this guy right here to finish the sequence, and then get color A. And now we're going to start the next sequence. So we're going to use color A in the next stitch. And then color A again in the next stitch. And I'm going to grab my color B. And I'm going to work 3 stitches with color B, the white. So there's 1. There's 2, and number 3, and then after that I'm going to switch back to color A. So color A likes to hide on me for some reason. Just kind of funny. Alright, so there we're back on color A. So now we finished this sequence here. We're on round 6 for color A. We are going to work 3 stitches of color A. And it creates our little spots, and then 1 spot will be completed. So there's number 2 with color A, and then number 3 switching to color B. And we're going to continue this sequence all the way around. So basically it's 3 stitches of color A, 3 stitches of color B. Okay, so we're just about done with round 6. So this is the last stitch in round 6 right here. And we're going to finish that off with color A. So now we're ready to begin round 7. And round 7 is easy. You're just going to continue to work this same stitch pattern in color A. So we're just going to work our waistcoat stitch all the way around with color A, and we've completed 1 round of our little spots. Okay, so I'm just about done round 7. This is my last stitch for round 7. So to begin round 8, you're going to need to change to color B. So we're ready to begin round 8 with color B. So for round 8, we're going to start on our next set of spots. So we're going to do the same thing, except they're going to be staggered a little bit. So instead of being right on top of each other, so the spots are we're gonna fill in this little area here. So to start off round 8, we're going to work 3 stitches with color B. So there's stitch number 1, number 2, and number 3. And then I'm going to change back to color A that always likes to hide from me. There we are. And we're going to work 3 stitches in color A for round 8. And then I'm going to get ready to change back to color B, watching my tension for my next set of spots. And you're just going to keep doing the same thing all the way around for round 8. Okay, so I'm almost done round 8. I'm finishing up my last stitch and we'll be ready to begin round 9. So for your last stitch of round 8, you're going to need to switch back to color B. And we're ready to start round 9. So we have 3 in the white, so we're going to work 4 stitches starting for round 9 in color B. So there's 1, 2, 3, and number 4. And now we need to switch back to color A. And then we're going to begin our sequence, our next sequence. So for the next stitch, so we have 4 of color B. The next stitch is color A. And then we need to switch back over to color B, because the next stitches, we're going to work 5 stitches in color B. And then that's going to be the sequence. It's going to be 5 with color B, and then 1 of color A. So there's stitch number 1, stitch number 2, stitch number 3, 4, and then 5. And we'll switch back to color A briefly. So you're working mostly with color B for this round. So then the next stitch is color A, just the 1. And like they're right there, but they want to hide. So next 5 in color B, and we're just going to keep doing that same sequence all the way around to work on our next set of spots. Okay, so we are almost done round 9. There's 2 more stitches left, so we need to finish off this sequence right here because we only have the 4. So I'm going to work with my color A for my second to the last stitch, switch over to color B, and then we're going to finish off this sequence. This is the last stitch. Now we're ready to work round 10. So for round 10, I'm just going to work 4 stitches with color B, and it's basically the same thing as round 9, working 5 with the color B, 1 with the color A. So now I'm going to switch back to color A, work my 1 stitch, and then switch back again. Where are you, color B? A little tricky working through a camera. Usually I now have it on my lap, so it makes it a little easier to find, and I'm sure that's probably how you'll be working, but we'll get it done. Alright, so we're going to work our sequence of 5 with color B. And switching off to color A. Work our 1 stitch with color A and then back again. So this is a lot of switching around with this round. Alright, so we're almost done round 10. So I need to finish off my last stitch. Whoops, and I should have switched to color B here. So I'm gonna finish up my color A, grab my color B, and we're going to finish off round 10. So we need to finish off this sequence right here with color B, just like that. And now we are ready for round 11. So our first stitch, we're going to use continue with color B and work 3 in color B. So it looks like we're working 4, but that's technically the end of round 10. So now we're on round 11, so don't even think about that guy right now. And now we are, whoops, finish up that stitch there. Now we're going to grab color A. Again, it's hiding. There she is. Color A, come out to play. Switching to color A. Now we're going to work 3 stitches with color A. And our sequence will begin again. So if we're starting round 11, we have to, basically finish up the other sequence. And now it officially starts. So there's stitch number 2. And now we'll switch back to color B. And we will work 3 stitches in color B. And this will finish up our second set of spots. And they're looking pretty cute, I think. I think this hat is really sweet. And it would be nice for a boy or a girl. So now we need to work our next set in color A, next 3. So there's 1, 2, and apologize if you're hearing a whole bunch of mowing, and I'm not even sure what's going on outside. Our neighbor is just having a party out there with his mower, and I don't know, a bunch of different lawn equipment's happening, and it's actually in the morning, so I guess he just woke up and decided, we need to get to town on this. So we're going to switch back again after we work our third stitch of color B. Back to color A. So I'm going to continue around with round 11. Okay, I'm at my last 2 stitches for round 11. And now we're at our last stitch. And we are ready to start round 12. Now if you need, certainly use a stitch marker to keep track of your rounds. It's completely up to you. So now for round 12 is we are just going to single crochet with color A, working in the waistcoat or split single crochet stitch, whatever you want to call it, all the way around for round 12. Alright, so now we're ready to start round 13. I just need to finish up round 12. So I have 1 more stitch to go. And now we're ready for round 13. Now you may notice that because of the not joining, the way the rounds, your one little spot might look a little bit funky. It's just because of the rounds, starting around here. But I think it looks a lot nicer than having an outright seam. So hopefully if you have OCD, it won't bother you too much. Alright, so for round 13, we're going to work 1, 2, 3, oops, wanting to work a regular single crochet, come on. I made this last row, I think I made them a little tight after I had warned you not to do that, and here I go ahead and do it. But it's my own fault. So 4, now we're going to switch back to color B for our last set of spots. So we are working color B, and we're just going to work 1 stitch of color B. So we're going to switch back to color A, and we are going to work 1. This will be the start of the sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So it'll be 5 in color A, and then you'll switch to color B and just have the one in color B. And I'm going to switch back to color A, and then I'm going to keep going, working my 5 in color B and then back to color A. Okay, I'm just about done round 13. So this is my second to my last stitch of round 13. But to keep up with the stitch pattern, I'm actually going to need to make, for my last stitch of round 13, I'm going to need to use color B. And again, it will look a little wonky, but it's just because of the way the rows, or I'm sorry, the rounds, you know, where one starts and the other one begins. But again, I think it looks nicer than having an obvious seam. And this will be the back of the hat, so it shouldn't be too noticeable. So we're going to be starting round 14, so we're going to use color A. So there's 1, 2, and 3, and now we need to switch back to color B. And these will be our little spots. So we'll do 3 stitches of color B. So there's 1, 2, and then for number 3 we need to switch back to color A. So we are almost done working our spots for this hat, and then we'll begin getting ready to decrease. So we're going to start the sequence of 1 in color A, 2 of color A, and 3, and now we need to switch to color B and work 3 in color B. And we're going to keep going around, so basically it's 3 color B, 3 of color A. Okay, so we are ready to finish up round 14. I'm at my last 3 stitches. So I've worked my 3 here, so I have color B. So I'm going to work color B, and then I'm going to work color B again to start off the sequence, and then to end this row I'm going to work color A. So again, it doesn't look the best, but because of the way the rows end and start. But again, I'm sure I'm repeating myself, better than a seam. Alright, so now we're ready to begin round 15. So with color A, work 1, 2, 3, and then stitch 4, we're going to switch back to color B. But we are almost done with color B, so soon you'll be able to cut it off. And then you won't have to worry about color B for a little while. So we're going to work 1 stitch of color B for our little spot, switch back to color A, and now we are going to work 5 stitches in color A. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then here's number 5, and then we'll need to switch back to color B. A little yarn situation. This yarn and this white yarn doesn't like to, oh, and there's hair on there. Just a hot mess going on. Doesn't want to come out of the skein very easily. So then we're going to work 1 stitch of color B and then switch back to color A. So you're going to keep doing that around for round 15. So it's going to be 5 of color A and then 1 of color B. So 5 here, color B, then I'll work 5 here. Okay, we are almost done round 15. We're at our last 3 stitches of round 15. So I'm going to insert my hook. I've worked 4 out of our sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4 of color A. So I'm going to insert my hook into the next stitch into our funky last spot, because again of the rows, or not the rows, the rounds. So we are going to insert color B. So we've created 5, so now we're at stitch 71, because there's 72. So we're using color B for that. And then our last stitch of round 15 will be color A. So now we've completed 15 rounds so far of our pattern. So we are now done with our spots. So what you can do now is you can snip color B. So for round 16, what we need to do is just stitch all the way around, work even. Okay, I'm at my last 2 stitches of round 16 of working even. So that would be stitch 71. And now we are at stitch 72. And of course, if you need to mark your last stitch, certainly feel free to do that. All right, so now we are going to start our decrease row. So what we're going to do is work it in sequence of 12. So if you think of it in each little section in 12, then it will make things a little bit easier. So we are going to work 1, 2, whoops, didn't put my hook in there right. And we're still working in our same stitch pattern of the waistcoat stitch. And I said it right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Made these a little bit tight and the yarn is splitting. Makes for a fun time. Let's see, it's not always smooth sailing. 7, that's good enough. 8, 9, 10. So I didn't listen to myself of being relaxed when I crocheted, and I told you I tend to be a tighter crocheter. So now we've made 10, and I told you it's a sequence of 12. So our next 2 stitches, 11 and 12, are going to be the decrease section. So how we're going to do our decrease stitch or our together stitch, you're going to insert your hook like normal in the waistcoat stitch, pull up a loop, just like that. Insert your hook into the next stitch, so this will be stitch 12, and pull up another loop. So now you have 3 loops on your hook, and we're going to pull through all 3 loops. Turn these 2 stitches into 1. We've now made our first decrease. And we're going to do the same thing, so think of it in groups of 12, our sequence of 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 6, 7, 8, 9, and there's number 10, and now we need to work our decrease stitch. So we're at our last 2, 11 and 12 stitches. So insert your hook into the first stitch, pull up a loop, insert your hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, and then pull through all 3 loops. And you've worked another section of your 12 stitches, and I'm going to keep going around the hat, and I will meet you back at the end. Okay, I'm almost done round 17. So now I'm going to finish up I have 2 more stitches, so 1 more decrease or together stitch. So this would be our sequence of 12, so this would be stitch 11, and this would be stitch 12. So I've got my 3 loops, I'm going to pull them all together, and now I have finished up round 17, and we are ready to start round 18, and we are going to continue to decrease. So now we're going to have a sequence of 11. And I'll show you how to work in the decrease stitch. So there's stitch 1, stitch 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I did again work these a little tight, not following my own instructions. Number 8, now we're at stitch number 9, so we'll work a regular split single crochet or waistcoat, see, I can't say that, waistcoat stitch. I need to practice that. Alright, so now I'm at stitches 10 and 11. So what we'll need to do is we'll insert our hook in stitch 10, pull up our loop like that, and now this is a decrease stitch that we made in the previous round. So what you need to do is you need to look for the V stitch here. And you can see it right there, right in between my thumbs there. So insert your hook right in the middle of that guy, pull up your loop, and it can be a little tricky, especially when you crochet tightly like me. Try to loosen her up here. There we go. Alright, so now I've got my 3 loops. I'm going to pull through all 3, and I'm going to do the same thing. Continue around in my sequence of 11. So there's stitch 1, 7, 8, there's stitch number 9. Now we're ready to decrease again. So we are at stitches 10 and 11. So I'll insert my hook in the first one, find my V, there it is right there, insert it into the net and the V. I have my 3 loops, going to pull through all 3, and I've now made another decreased stitch. So I'm going to continue around. Alright, so we're almost done round 18, so I'm going to finish up my last 2 stitches. So stitch number 10 and stitch number 11. Pull through those guys. So for round 18 you should have a total of 60 stitches. So now we're ready for round 19, and we're going to do a sequence of 10. So I'm sure you can figure out, you know, we started with 12, we went to 11, now we're at 10, and you just keep on going down. So it's stitch 1, 2, and now I need to work my decrease stitch. So pop my hook in for stitch number 9, and then bind my V stitch there, and stitch 10. And I've completed one sequence of 10. And we'll just continue around with our next sequence of 10. Okay, I'm going to finish up round 19. Now I finished up round 19, and you should have a total of 54 stitches. Now we're ready for round 20. So same thing, we're going to do a sequence of 8. So there's stitch number 1, 7. Now we're doing a sequence of 9. So now we have stitches 8 and 9. So pop that in there, pop that in there to work our decrease stitch, and then pull through all 3 stitches for our sequence of 9. And I'll meet you back. Okay, so I'm almost done round 20. I have my last 2 stitches. So I need to work, this is stitch number 8 and stitch number 9. To complete my sequence of 9, not 8, 9. Now for round 21, it will be a sequence of 8. So we are going to start off, same thing. So stitch number 1, stitch number 2, number 3, 4, 5, stitch number 6, and then we have 7 and 8. So we're working the decrease in stitches 7 and stitch 8. Pull through all 3, and we've worked one sequence. So we're going to keep going till we've completed this round, and I'll meet you back. Okay, so we are almost done round 21 of our sequence of 8. So there's 7, there's 8, and at the end of this round you should have a total of 42 stitches. And if I didn't say previous round, you should have had 48 stitches. So now we are doing a sequence of 7. An easy way to remember is we started at 72 stitches, and we started with 12. So 12 times 6 is 72, and then it decreased down to 11. So 11 times 6 is 66, 10 times 6 is 60, 9 times 6 is 54, 8 times 6 is 48. So now we're on a sequence of 7. So, you know, that's 42. So that's stitch 1. So it is all about the math, and I don't like math that much, but this math I can handle. So, and once you think of like the patterns and sequences, it's not so bad. So there's 3, 4, 5, and then stitches 6 and 7, 6, 7. So you'll notice that the top of your hat is getting smaller, you know, turning it into more of that rounded hat shape is what we want. Keep on going for this round, and I'll meet you back. All right, so I just finished round 22. Now we're on to round 23. So you should have a total of 36 stitches. So now we need to do a sequence of 6. So here's stitch number 1, stitch number 2, number 3. Now we're at number 4. And we're at 5 and 6 right there. So we're working our decrease stitch. Pop that in there, pop it into the next one. We've got 3 loops, pull through all 3, and keep on going. All right, and I'm going to keep going around, finish up this round, and I'll meet you back. All right, I've just finished up round 23, so you should have a total of 30 stitches. Now we're doing a sequence of 5. So stitch number 1, we're getting close to the end of this part of the hat. 2, 3, and then my last 2 stitches, 4, and come on, get in there, 5. And we're just going to keep on going around, and I'll see you at the end of this round. Alright, so we just finished up round 24, and you should have a total of 24 stitches, so I planned that pretty good. And I didn't do that on purpose, it just worked out that way. So round 24 and 24 stitches. So now we're going to start round 25, and we're doing a sequence of 4. So there's 1, 2, 3, and stitch 4. So we have our decrease stitch right there, and we'll keep going around, and we are getting really close to finishing up this hat. Alright, so I finished round 25, and you should have a total of 18 stitches. So now we're going to get ready to close up this hole, and I'm going to borrow a technique from knitting that I came up with for crochet, and I actually have a YouTube video on this technique. I think it just gives a little bit of a neater look to your crochet projects. Just gives it a nicer finish, but that's just my opinion. So what we're going to do is you're going to insert your hook into your first stitch, and then you're going to keep pulling up loops. So we're just going to continue working in the waistcoat. Hey, I said it right. And or split double crochet, and you're going to pull up as many loops as you can with this hook. And it'll get a little bit crowded, it might get a little bit tricky, but just try to do as many as you can. I think I can get one more guy on there. Well, maybe one more. Alright, so I think I'm not going to press my luck. I've got as many as I can on that hook. So what you want to do is I'm going to grab another hook. So you could either go up one smaller or one, or go down. Sorry, not go up one smaller. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Go down a size, or you could go up a size. It doesn't matter. I think this is the E hook I was working with. So now I'm going to go into my next stitch right here, pop my hook in, and here's my working yarn, and just pull that guy through, and I'm going to keep going around and fit as many loops as I can on this hook. Now sometimes I can do this technique with just 2 hooks, sometimes I need to use 3. If it's really tricky, you could even use 4. The sizes do not have to match. You just don't want them to be like, you know, this is an F hook or 3.75. You don't want to use an I hook. That's too much of a jump. But if it's one size up, or I actually have it, I think it's I'm going to use another one. I think this one is a D hook 3.25. So it's not too much smaller, and I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. Because I don't think I can do, since this is a smaller hat, you know, for a small toddler or small child, I'm going to need to bust out the third hook, so I don't want to pull my hair out doing this. So I'm just going to pop hook number 3. Now, if you're finding that this is just too much work, too much trouble, you just don't want to do it, you know, you can certainly sew it up and do that too. I just think this looks nicer. And there's one more loop. Get her in there. All right. So I've worked in my stitch pattern, the split, and I have all 3 hooks. All my loops are secured. So it almost looks like, you know, a double pointed needle situation with knitting, but you're using crochet hooks. All right, so now we're going to work these loops off. So what you're going to do is you'll take your working yarn, start with the last hook that you put the loops on, and I'm going to yarn over. And what you're going to do is you're going to pull through all of these loops to close it up. So don't rush through it. Don't just, you know, burn through it. Just take your time. So it's like almost like a giant slip stitch. So I've finished off that one. So you take this loop and you're going to pop it on to the next hook, pull it through. You do want it on the little bit of the tighter side, but you don't have to have it so tight that, you know, you can't manipulate it or anything. So we're just going to pull through these guys, and you can just kind of go one at a time, especially with this yarn because it is a splitty type of yarn, and I don't want to have to redo this. Because that's happened before. I've tried to rush it, and then I've had to redo this, and that's a pain in the neck. We don't want to do that. So I'm done with this hook, set that one down, and I'm going to go to my last one, stick my loop on there, pull it through, and we are ready to pull through the rest of these guys. So I'm just going to take my time, pull her through, and we're at the last one. All right, so now we have finished. Oops, and I'm bumping the camera. All right, it's good times here. So what you're going to want to do is you have your loop there. You'll take your scissors. I'm grabbing some scissors here. Aren't these the cutest scissors ever? Like, they're just so cute and little. I got them for Christmas. Just love them. All right, I'm going to snip my yarn. Put my hook back in my loop. And I'm going to thread her through. Just thread it through like you would finish up a project. And pull it as tightly as I can. And see, now you have just a much nicer, neater, tidier looking hole there, and you can pull that fairly tightly and just to cinch that guy right up. And then I'll tuck this loop right into the middle of the hat. What I usually like to do is I'll just turn it onto the wrong side, put my hook right in the middle, grab that tail, and just pull it through, and then give it a good tug there, and then it'll be all set. Whoops, hitting the camera again, and there you can see. I just think it looks a little bit nicer and neater. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. You might think it's horrible, but that's okay. It's all right to have a different opinion. All right, so we have finished off with this part of our hat. And with this yarn, this is going to need a good blocking. That'll be part of finishing. So now we'll need to make our ears. So as you can see, I've already made one ear, and now we need to make the other ear to complete our little deer hat. So I have my color A, I have my F hook, or 3.75 millimeter. And what we're going to do, and I suggest actually starting with a longer tail at the end of your slip knot, and you're going to use that for sewing. It'll just help to have less ends to weave in. So I've got my tail, and now we are going to chain 9. Okay, I've worked my 9 chains. I have my long tail. I am ready to go. We are going to work in the second chain from our hook in the back bump. So just turn your chain over and we're working in the back bump. And we're going to work a single crochet, and you're going to continue to single crochet all the way across, and you should have a total of 8 single crochet. So there's, whoops, and this yarn splitting like mad. There's 3, 4, 5, 6. Oops. Some reason this does not want to cooperate. And then 2 more for number 7. We are going to get this done, whether it wants to or not. Oh my goodness. Split crazy. There we go. I'll be happy to be done with this yarn. Alright, so we have our 8 single crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. And then we are going to chain 1. We are going to turn, and we are going to work another row of single crochet. And you're going to keep working single crochet. We are going to work a total of 10 rows. So once you have 10 rows, then you'll be ready to start our decrease round. So I'm going to keep working my rows. Okay, so now I have my 10 rows. So now we are going to chain 1, we are going to turn, and we are ready to start row 11. So how we're going to do that, we're going to start decreasing these, or working some together stitches. I'm going to insert my hook right in that same stitch, right in the front loop only, just like that. Then I'm going to insert my hook into the next stitch, front loop only. And I have 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to pull through 2 of those loops. So now I have 2 loops. I'm going to yarn over and pull through. And now I have made 1 together stitch. And this is a little bit different than a typical single crochet together or decrease stitch. I find it to be a little less bulky. Sometimes when you're working single crochet decrease stitches, I find them to be a little bit bulky, and I don't want that in this pattern. So this is a nice little trick. So we're going to continue to single crochet all the way across to the last 2 stitches. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to work our decrease stitch. So we're going to insert our hook into the front loop only, just like that. And now we're going to do it for the same on the other stitch. So now we have 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2. Now I have 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both of those. And now we've decreased from 8 stitches to 6, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so we're good to go. I'm going to chain 1, I'm going to turn, and I'm going to just single crochet all the way across for row 12. Alright, so now we've completed row 12. I'm going to chain 1, I'm going to turn, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to decrease again. So insert in the first loop, insert in the second loop, and then make our decrease stitch. And then single crochet in the next 2 stitches, and then our last 2. We are going to do that decrease stitch again. So insert in the first loop, insert in the second loop. So we've got our 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 1, 2 loops, yarn over, pull through those 2 loops. So now we have 4 stitches. I'm going to chain 1, turn. So now we're going to work. So now we are going to work row 14. So we've chained 1, we've turned, and we're just going to single crochet across in those 4 stitches. And then row 15, chain 1, turn. We are going to decrease again, so insert your hook right in that first front loop, insert your hook into the second front loop, and this is fun with the splitting yarn. So yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over again, pull through the last 2. And we're going to do the same thing. So insert your hook in the first front loop, second front loop, yarn over, pull through the 2, yarn over. So chain 1, turn, and we'll just single crochet in those last 2 stitches. And as you can see, it's starting to look like an ear is what we want. So now what we're going to do is we are going to just work slip stitch all the way around until we get to this corner, and we'll single crochet across and slip stitch again. So what you want to make sure is you have the same amount of stitches on both sides so that each side is even. So and this is part of finishing work so that you can make your project look really nice. You'd want to be careful when you're inserting your hook on working on the edges of your rows is to not have gaps if you can avoid it. So this, I crochet tightly, so that kind of helps, but I'm just going to slip stitch kind of gently. I don't want it too tight. So if you inserted your hook here, see how that provides maybe like a little bit of a hole. So if you go maybe in this stitch here, it's not so bad. In here, and I'm trying not to work too tightly, so I've worked 3. So you just want to keep track of your count. It's too far and you want to have them kind of even. So we'll go in here. So there's no real exact science with this, it's just how it looks. And this side, this is even side rows, is your right side. So just kind of eyeball it as you're slip stitching, and if you're like, oh, there's too much of a hole there, then try again. So it's kind of trial and error. If it doesn't bother you, then go ahead and just fly through it, but I'm kind of a perfectionist. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just want to keep track of my stitches here. So as you can see, I'm working down, there's not really any gaps showing. And that's what I mean. Just, take your time. You want it to look nice. Takes your project to the next level. At least I think so. So I'm going to continue down this side. Okay, so now I've slip stitched down this side. I've actually worked 13 slip stitches, so I'm going to remember that number. And now I'm at this corner. So what we're going to want to do here, this is the ends of row 1. And as you can see, we worked in the back bump, so it looks like, just regular single crochet stitches. So if we just inserted our hook here, that's going to create, it's just kind of going to kink it up. So what you can do is we're just going to chain 1, and it kind of makes its own little slip stitch right there. And now that gives you a little bit of some leg room there to insert your hook right into that stitch. And of course I made these super tight because that's just how I roll. And I'm going to work 8 single crochet all the way across. So all you want to do is you'll want your working yarn in front of that guy. So just kick him to the curb for now. We don't need him yet. We will later. All right, so now we're at our next corner. And we want to work, I worked 13, so we want to have 13, but it's actually 14 because I'm going to chain 1, and see, then that gives me a little bit of leg room to start working up this side here. So I'm just going to continue. Okay, as you can see, I've finished stitching up the side, and I have the same amount on this side as this side, and now I want to finish this round. So I'm just going to slip stitch in my first single crochet stitch. If I can get that in there with this ridiculously splitting yarn. And there we go. And what you want to do is just snip that, and we have one part of our ear finished. And then you want to take color B, which is my white, and do the same thing with the first one. You're going to chain 9, work your single crochet across. So you'll have 8 single crochet. You'll work 10 rows of single crochet with 8 stitches across, and row 11 you start your decrease row of 1 on each end, and then the next row you work even and then decrease until you have 2 stitches, work even, and then you'll work your slip stitch evenly all the way around. So you can refer back. So I'm going to work on my second part of my ear, and I will show you how to finish those ears off. Okay, now I have both sides of my ear done. And what you're going to want to do is that long tail that you have, you're going to want to take a yarn needle or a tapestry needle. It's either or, whatever you want to call it. So this is my right side. This is my right side. So what you're going to want to do is have both right sides touching, and you're going to sew. I know I don't like sewing that much, but with this pattern it just looks better. Sew all the way around, and you're going to have an opening down here, and then you're going to sew this part to your hat wherever you want it. Now if it really bothers you, I'm not going to bother to weave in these ends because they're going to be tucked in to the wrong side and they're going to be sewn in. No one's going to see them, and actually it gives a little bit of kind of cushion, puffs out the ear a little bit. But if it really bothers you, feel free, weave in those ends. But I hate weaving in ends and no one's going to see it, so I'm not doing it. Alright, so I'm going to start. So that's why we have this long tail, and you're just going to match up your slip stitches. So starting on the bottom here, that one, there, and just start sewing, and you'll want to insert your needle in both of the loops of the slip stitch. And the reason why we slip stitch, it just gives a neater edge and it's easier to follow when it's time to sew. You know, just helps you out a little bit, you know, just a little trick. I mean, some people, you know, if you don't want to do that, you can just kind of find your edges, but I just find this to make life a little bit easier. And don't sew it too tightly. You don't want to, you know, pull it. You know, just have nice even tension. Okay, I've now finished sewing around my ear, both sides, and as you can see the ends popping out, but you know, that's all right. So what we're going to do is you want to turn it right side out. So this is now the right side, and then all those ends get hidden inside. So again, if they really bother you, you know, certainly weave them in, but we're not going to. So just gonna tuck that guy right in there. Now what you'll want to do is you'll take your hat, and I already have one ear sewn on, so you'll just want to eyeball it and sew on the other ear so it matches, and you'll sew onto the hat, and then you'll sew through here to close this shut. So I'm not going to try to do this on camera because I think it's going to get sewn on crooked and it's just going to look silly. So I'm going to sew this off camera, and then when my hat is finished, I'm going to give this a hard block to soften this up. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and hope you enjoyed this hat.